Today is Monday, July 8th, 2024, and I am interviewing Miguel Menchaca of the Iraq War, who served 2002 to 2004. Myself, Dixie Ferguson, and Vic Phillips, a videographer, are conducting the interview today. Miguel, where were you born?
I was born in Walla, Washington.
And again, what war and branch of service were you serving?
I was in the Operation Iraqi Freedom. I did 2 tours in the United States Marine Corps.
Okay. And upon your departure, your rank was from the service?
I got out as a sergeant, E5.
Sergeant.
Yep.
Okay. And I think you already answered it, where you served was Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
And also Okinawa.
Yeah, I was stationed in Okinawa, and I was stationed in Camp Pendleton. Mm-hmm. And my tours to Iraq were on deployments out of Camp Pendleton with Echo Company, 2nd Battalion, 1st Marine Division, or 1st Marine Regiment, 1st Marine Division.
All right. And you were drafted or enlisted?
Enlisted.
Enlisted. And why did you join the Marine Corps?
Oh, several reasons. I joined the Marine Corps first and foremost. My family is a military family. My dad is a Navy veteran, and I had an uncle on my mom's side of the family who was in the Marine Corps. He retired from the Marine Corps as a captain. He went in as an enlisted man when he was 17, and he's the youngest of her brothers. So he was. I have a lot of memories of writing letters to him and him sending me Marine Corps covers and canteens and stuff like that. And I remember writing him when he was in Hawaii and things like this, and it just felt like the right thing to do after 9/11 had happened. I wasn't doing a heck of a lot in the city that I grew up in and lived in, and one of my friends had also joined, and he called me from his MOS school, which was in Missouri, I believe. He was Maruti, and it didn't take long for him to have to convince me. And then later on that week, the recruiter came, and I told him that yes, not only did I want to join, but I want to get out of the city as quickly as possible. And
we won't name the city.
I was 18. I was 18 when that happened, and I was by the time I got to boot camp, I'd had a birthday and was 19.
All right.
Yeah.
What did your parents think about your choice?
My parents were initially. My mom was kind of scared. My dad was very pleased with the decision, and they've just been great throughout the whole. I mean, they're great parents, period. But since I've joined, they've always been supporting what I've done. But they've been really supportive of my my military career, my choice to join, and even with how I've. They've always been supported in anything that's happened that's military related since then as well.
Mm-hmm. I love what you said after 9/11.
Right.
I'm assuming there were many of you that joined after that.
Yeah, I think most of my friends, my friend group, all of them at some point joined some sort of military service, whether that was the National Guard, just the Army, but I think I was the only one that joined the Marine Corps, and I was the first one to join also, and then they all kind of joined as well. There's several young men that I know that were either a grade behind me or a couple grades behind me that also joined as well after 9/11.
A real patriotic thing to do.
Sure, yeah. I think I grew up. I watched a lot of movies. Some of them are very near to my heart even still, and. One of those movies I remember watching was Born on the 4th of July, and I remember Tom Cruise telling his group of buddies, this is what happened, this is what young men do when there's something like this going on, when there's a conflict, and it just felt like the absolute right thing to do. Yeah.
Right after you signed up, how quickly did they call you up to go to boot camp?
It was a quick process. From the recruiter's call to boot camp, I would say about 3 months, and that even got delayed a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, and you reported to where?
I reported to Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, on February 24th of 2002.
Okay. I watched the movie. Is it Bullet? What was it? Metal Jacket Bullet?
Oh, Full Metal Jacket.
Was boot camp like that, Miguel?
Boot camp was not so much like that, but people ask me. I remember when I got back from boot camp, is it like Full Metal Jacket? Well, and I said, well, not really. And they said, well, is it worse or better? And I said, well, it's kind of worse in some ways, and it's kind of better in some ways. In that movie, I remember watching it, and it was kind of like there was only one. You only saw one drill instructor interact with the recruits, and it was not nearly as fast paced as it is in person. In boot camp, those guys move around so quick, and they're like the pinnacle of what it is to be a Marine. Their uniforms
What does that mean? Go ahead.
That means they're always looking. Their uniforms are always in top-notch condition at all times. They're in peak physical condition, which means they can do a 300 PF. They can all run like rabbits, and they can all do 20 pull-ups, and they're no drill inside and out. I mean, to be a drill instructor, you have to know every drill movement verbatim, every word of it. And not only that, they have to be, anything that is done, they can do it about, I would say, at the very least, 3 times better than you. But most things they're doing it about 10 things better than you. And they have very little time. They're like machines. They're there all the time with you.
All the time.
All the time. As boot camp progresses, they'll start a rotation where only one of them stays the night with you. But at any given time, there is at the very least 2 of them there, at the most 4 of them there. And they are machines. Like I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they stay in physical condition. I actually had orders to go be a drill instructor when I was a sergeant, when I separated from the Marine Corps. But I had 2 daughters with the mom, and the mom moved up here, and I couldn't stay in it. It would have been.
Would you have wanted to do it?
I did want to do it. It was kind of my dream, the whole time that I was enlisted. But it was more of my dream to raise my daughters,
Yeah. Could you, if there was a typical day, you call it boot camp, right?
Yes.
If there was a typical day, could you just describe it?
Oh, that's tough. It's tough to describe because it's always different. But every morning starts out pretty similar in that you wake up. As soon as you wake up, so before you wake up, the drill instructor are walking around the squad bay, and they're talking to you, and you're having to respond to them, even though there's a certain time that the lights come on, and they can't start the day until that time starts, and they turn on automatically. So they're walking around the squad bay saying things like, you guys better be moving with speed and intensity today, like any of you guys are, stuff like that. Just little incentives to be making sure that you're doing what you need to. So you're laying in bed, right, at the position of attention. You're already awake, but you're not technically you're not awake yet. As soon as the lights come off, you jump up out of the rack and you stand in front of your footlocker where you keep your belongings, right, at the position of attention, and you're in skivvies and a skivvy shirt. That's it. And then they do a count off. So the first guy counts, the drill instructor yells, count off, and then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and all the way around the squad bay. If there's any hiccup in that, he'll say that again. He'll say count off, and then you start all over. So at the very beginning, when you first get there, it takes a long time to get through the morning, right? When you first get there, they do everything by the numbers, which means when you go to sleep at night, and they do this for a while in the Marine Corps boot camp. So like when you go to sleep, they are like before bed, they will tell you like, okay, so you're what to get in, what uniform to get, and they'll say something like, once you get in the bathroom, they'll say like, okay, you've got like 30 seconds to brush the right side of your mouth right now, and then they start counting backwards. 30, 29, 20, and they do it really, really fast. Then when they get about to 10, then it really just 10, 9, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you should be, and then you have to say, done, sir. And then they'll say, okay, left side of your mouth right now. You have 30 seconds. Ready, go. And then you have 30 seconds. And they do that with everything.
What's the point?
The point is that they're the boss. That's the attention. That you don't have the attention span to do anything on your own. You have no ability to make any judgment outside of what they tell you to do. And even the things like that, you will probably screw it up in some way. So when you take a shower, it's like they squish everybody in there, and they'll say, all right, get your head wet, your head with water right now, and they'll give you like 10 seconds, right? And then they'll say, now clean your hair with shampoo. or no, with soap. You only have soap. Clean your head right now. And then you've got to scrub your head, and they'll give you like 10 seconds for that. And then they move to your neck, your chest, your arm, your other arm, wow. And then as it goes, yeah.
Miguel,
yes.
What hair did you have?
I didn't have any hair. But it's not like you can put your hand up there and feel it. You can't make any movements at all, of course. So I just looked around, and everybody looked very different than when we first walked in. But it didn't register in my mind that I looked that different as well until, you get in front of the mirror and you look at it and you're going, it's not something that you double take at. You don't want to look again.
Is it true the minute you, we won't belabor this too long, but is it true the minute you arrive in San Diego, that's the first thing they do is line you up for a haircut?
That's true, but it starts even before you get to Marine Corps Recruit Depot, because you meet at the VSO at the airport. So when they get there to pick you up to boot camp, it's a drill instructor there, and I remember they were yelling at us before we even got on the bus, and it started right there at the airport. So there was a guy that there was supposed to hold the files that he had read and making sure that everybody was there that was supposed to be. But he would read off a name and then just throw it. And it wasn't necessarily at the guy's hands who was supposed to hold him. So there were already stuff scattered everywhere. Like the guy's having such a hard time pick him up, And then you get on the bus and they tell you to put your head between your legs. Don't look around. Don't speak. Don't do anything. Then as soon as you get off the bus, you stand on these yellow footprints, and you're there with your folder in hand. And then as soon as you get inside, you line up to get your head shaved. And the guy tells you, any scars, moles, or scabs, point them out or they're coming off. And the guy that had been there, come to find out, he'd been there for, I think, 35 years doing that same exact job. And he himself is a Marine as well, a former Marine, yeah.
What is the point of getting the haircut?
Uniformity, and I think it begins the process of taking you, removing you from the environment and the comfort that you're used to, and it's kind of, so I would say just that. Was
there any point at boot camp where you thought, oh my gosh, what have I done?
Immediately. The whole time. Not the whole entire time. So when you get there and you go through the initial processing, there's drill instructors that are only doing that. They're regular drill instructors, but they have what they call I forget what they call it, but they either do receiving, which is that. They do McMap, which is mixed martial arts and hand-to-hand combat. They do they do teaching, which is where they put you, so they're in front of the recruits teaching knowledge. And so they're like a teacher basically, and they do that for 1 year out of the 3-year tour at the drill field. So when you're with the receiving drill instructors, it's not the Marines that are going to be training you for the 13-week period of your training. Training day 1 hasn't even started. Mm-hmm. So when they do the transfer over from the receiving drill instructors to your training drill instructors, it's this thing called Black Friday, and boot camp in a sense hasn't even started until you get there, even though it is, you're in boot camp. And when you meet the drill instructors, they have this very formal, very proper introduction and explanation of what the process is, how it's going to be conducted. And it's your senior drill instructor. He memorizes the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And he tells you, at Marine Corps Recruit Depot, you're at Marine Corps Recruit Depot, during this time you will treat every Marine with the utmost respect, for they have earned their title, and basically you haven't. Any first words out of your mouth will always be sir, yes, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no, ma'am.
And that stays with you.
Absolutely, yeah. I still have a hard time sometimes not calling people sir mm-hmm. or ma'am, or a lot of times I'll get things like don't call me ma'am, it makes me feel old, or the guys that were enlisted don't like to be called sir because they were calling other people sir. So but it's something that's that even if you don't do that and call them sir, even older people, like I call you Miss Dixie, there's anybody that's older than me, I call him, like, there's a guy I know that his name is his last name is Mac, mm-hmm. or McReynolds, So people call him Mac, but I always called him Mr. Mac. And
It's a respect.
It is. It's out of respect, and not only them as a person for their age, but them as a person for how you would like them to interact with you. So the drill instructor and anybody else at the boot camp has knowledge that they're presenting to you to better you. It's not only is that their job, but it's their passion, and so it goes a lot further than them being there. They're not there just to haze recruits and be mean people. They're there because to me it feels like that they have such a high level of honor, respect, and love for the Marine Corps that they absolutely desire to make sure that those standards that have been set and that they have excelled at and lived by are presented to the next generation of Marines or recruits that desire to be Marines in the utmost, in the highest level possible.
Excellent definition.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
It is. No, that's very good. So
and back to what you were saying, same thing with when you interact with people, like they have knowledge to present to you, and it's not your job to interact with them unless it's up to them. If it's somebody older, you gotta, or for me, it feels like it's not something that it took a lot of thought. It was just something that stayed with me. But this is the best way that I can explain it: that you interact with somebody as such, not that they're your drill instructors, but you have to. It's not required or demanded, but it's respectful to treat somebody that's older in that manner because they've been through more than you have, and they have a lot more knowledge.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So that would be the motto: the few, the brave,
the few,
and the proud.
The few, the proud, the Marines. Yeah.
I assume that would be
part
of that.
And I'll say this: there's a lot fewer Marines than there is in the other branches, except the Coast Guard, maybe.
Yeah.
But I think that is because there's higher standards. But with higher, the more work you put in, the more work, the more you get back. And not to say anything against any of the other branches of service. I have a lot of really good friends who are soldiers, Navy, and corpsmen as well. Like they're a notch above. I mean, they're right in there with us. And I would say, sailors, airmen, I've got the most respect for every one of those branches. And some of my best friends are soldiers, but having said that, they don't all get to wear the Eagle Globe and Anchor. They don't all get to wear the Eagle Globe and Anchor.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying that they should desire it or they should want it, but it is something that I did want, and I did want to
and excel at it.
I did want to put in the extra work if that was necessary to be able to wear an Eagle Globe and Anchor and the dress blues and every other uniform that I ever got to put on as a Marine, and that I still am entitled to wear.
And you remember the names of your drill instructors?
Absolutely, every one of them. Every one of them. I still have memories about those guys sometimes.
I know a World War II veteran that still knows his drill instructor's name.
It's funny because they're I would have them yell at my face like this close, and I did not smell their breath one time, and I don't know how they did it. What's funny is that short time, those 3-month period in my life, I have so many vivid memories from, and things that I can't forget.
How do you explain that, Miguel?
I mean,
they just tear you down and reshape you?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not that they tear you down, it's that there's certain things that you have ingrained in you or embedded in you from the comforts of living as a child and a teenager that can't be present. And I'm not saying it all goes away instantly, right? Yeah. But there's things that need to be reformed or reshaped to be able to follow commands in the way that's necessary in combat, and also be a part of a unit and a team to operate and function as a well-oiled machine in the military. So you're not one; you're part of many.
Miguel, is that the emphasis? You are a team member.
Yes, absolutely, for sure, yeah.
Mhm.
And in boot camp, it's everything is relatable to combat. So you are expected to not be able to. You should not have the mindset to question what somebody tells you to do in combat situation. But that means that it doesn't mean that that's something that's, the Marine Corps leadership has a special way of weeding out anybody that should not be in a leadership position.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that comes from I think the how would I say, I think the way that somebody gets into a leadership over time has progressed or evolved in certain ways in the Marine Corps. And not only that, I think there's extensive studies on the best way to be a leader and embed those qualities in somebody else to back up how the Marines do business.
Mm-hmm. Excellent description of the core values of the Marines.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Now, graduation time, that must have been, did you say after about 3 months, graduation?
3 months, yeah.
That must have been quite a ceremony.
It
wearing
really,
that uniform.
It was something to be very proud of and something I'll never forget.
Yeah.
Also, I have a high school diploma, a 2 associates, a bachelor's degree, and I never participated in any of those graduation ceremonies. The only one that I've done is when I graduated from boot camp in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you still have your uniform?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I plan on wearing it in November to the Marine Corps Ball in Yakima. I mean, and it's not something that I do every year, but I do love getting in that uniform and getting dolled up and have a date by my side. Hopefully, we'll see. And then you go and you bump elbows with all these Marines, and everyone that I've went to, since being honorably discharged, I've only been to a couple, but I knew one of them was the guest speaker was a gunnery sergeant that I was with in Fallujah, and so
really?
yes, and he actually got he was on a turret or a 50 cal on the tank that he was the chief of, and it took an RPG somehow. I think one of his guys got injured and he jumped up there. He took an RPG, lost his eye, and he wears either a patch over it or a fake eye that has the Eagle Globe and Anchor. And he was one of the guest speakers. So when I got to meet him, when I went to the ball, I got to meet him and tell him I was the radio operator for the Forward Air Controller Woody, and he knew him, and I got to meet his wife and everything, and it was
a reunion.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was really cool.
It's a family.
It is a big family. Yeah,
that's
and it's not just the Marines. Like it's also the family of the family. Like if you have a family member that's a Marine, like as far as I'm concerned, like you're part of the Marine Corps family, and history in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The band of brothers.
Absolutely, yeah.
The bond. When you graduated, then it was, they call it advanced training next?
School of Infantry, yeah.
And that is, then, would you describe that then?
Yeah, School of Infantry is a 3-week course where, so you get taught how to shot and you rifle qualify in boot camp. School of Infantry is about a 3 to 4 week course where you're taught the basic infantry skills. So it's every Marine is a rifleman first and foremost, and then whatever MOS they are. If you're not in the infantry, if you're in the infantry straight from boot camp, you go also to the School of Infantry, but it's a more extensive course.
And you said every Marine is a rifleman.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that means they have to know the basics and
right. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I was not a 0311 infantryman, but I was a company radio operator in the infantry in the line company. So I was the only Marine that wasn't an 03 that was in the company. That's a group of about 250 men, but I'm kind of getting in front of myself here a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So you advanced at Camp Pendleton then?
Yeah, Camp Pendleton, which is about 45, 50 miles north of San Diego.
And
right.
that was 3 weeks?
I forget exactly how long it is, but it felt like it was about 3 to 5 weeks, maybe somewhere in there.
And I'm sorry, Miguel, did you say at that point then you were sorted out for radio man?
Yes, yeah, but I already knew. They told us there, I think, but I think I knew that I was going to be a radio man. So from there,
Did you want to?
I did want to, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't know a heck of a lot about it, but in my mind, I thought, like, well, I could still, like, potentially be on the front lines, but I could also still, like, I could be on a base and be communicating with those people, and I did a lot of both.
And you probably know the stories of radio men.
So it wasn't quite as bad in Vietnam. I think in Vietnam they really targeted those guys a lot more, and I did know that, but it wasn't quite as bad for us in Iraq.
So once you completed, did you do still a lot of marching at Camp Pendleton, or was it more classroom stuff?
It was more field stuff. Like we were in the field the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
so we're not in the classroom a heck of a lot, but we're still doing written tests after every week, and we're doing a lot of live action fire drills and hiking and stuff like that.
Were you settling in at this point then?
Not really. I mean, it was kind of it was still like you're still considered. You're not really considered. I mean,
You haven't arrived yet.
you're a Marine. You have the title of a Marine, and that's about it. Which is, it's not very. It's nothing to be bragging about or anything, even though all of us did when we were home on leave after boot camp,
With your uniform on.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so the next assignment, so at that point then you accomplished radio?
After that I went to field radio operator course, which was in 29 Palms, California.
Okay.
And there I was there for about 4 months, I believe. And it was really hot. It was really, there was a lot of extra duty, a lot of just watching the barracks, and there was a lot of studying, a lot of PT. So it's very similar, but you're with the same group of guys for about 4 to 6 months.
Were you with the same group all the way through from the beginning, or you split up?
No, you get split up, but there is still some guys that are with you from the beginning, but that number kind of get dwindled down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then after that was over, they gave us our orders and told us where we would be spending our first duty station.
Which was?
Mine was Okinawa, Japan. I was in the 1st Stinger Battery, which is a ground-to-air missile unit. I was there. I was as a radio operator, and it was.
What does that mean, Miguel? Ground-to-air missile. What does that mean?
So that means the guys that are on the ground, they have vehicles that can shoot down aircraft, enemy aircraft, or they also have. I forget what the weapon is called, but they also have a shoulder-fired weapon. And then it was, it was the perfect first duty station. I'm just so appreciative of the guys that I was over there with, because they taught me a lot of basic stuff about the radio. That was, it wasn't knowledge wasted, but it was, at the same time, it was a lot more, I wouldn't say laid back. I would say, how would I say? There wasn't quite as much. So when I got to Camp Pendleton, as soon as I got there, we were leaving for Iraq in like 4 weeks. So when I checked,
after Okinawa,
yeah, maybe it was 2 months, something like that. But I remember when I checked into the duty station and reported in to the commanding officer, he told me, well, you were going to Iraq in.
After you got home from Okinawa.
Yes, I was in Okinawa for only a year.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I got to Camp Pendleton and checked in, and he said, "Well, we're going to Iraq in like 2 months."
Did you?
How do you feel about
that? To happen?
Yeah, completely and totally.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was going to be that fast, but I did expect it, and that's what I wanted. I desired it. I didn't want
You did want to go.
Yeah, for sure. Because it was tough watching the invasion from Okinawa and seeing guys that I know I went to boot camp with, and guys that I know that I knew that were there, and I wasn't. It did not feel very good. Yeah.
So, so you, where did you report in the Middle East? Where did you report in?
In the Middle East, so it was kind of a lengthy process. We flew into Kuwait, and then we flew into Baghdad, and then from Baghdad we convoyed to Fallujah, and we were in what they call the forward observation base. So we weren't attached to like a major base in the country of Iraq. We were kind of out on our own. Having said that, we did have good security and things like this, but we would take mortar rounds here and there. But we were far enough away. We just needed to be close enough so that if something got crazy, then we could get to where, reach out and slap somebody. Basically, we could get to where we needed to go real quick. And yeah, that.
Well, okay. What's the time frame now at this point?
At this point, I've been in about close to 2 years.
And you were in Iraq at what year?
I was in Iraq. The first time when I got there, I arrived in February of 2004.
Go ahead.
And I'd been there when I got there. I'd only been at the forward observation base for about 3 days, and I'm sitting in the CP because they needed the command post because they always needed a radio guy there. And I'm watching the news, and they showed the. I don't know if you recall this. Actually, I'm pretty sure you do. I know you do. The Blackwater contractors had just got. They were showing them getting the crowds. Thank God they didn't show those guys, the men, those Americans that actually got drugged through the city. But they drug 4 Blackwater contractors through the city of Fallujah. We just got there, so. I mean, like within 2 days after. I mean, not even. It might have been like the next day after that, or maybe even that night. I don't remember. But I just told my sergeant earlier in that same day that, look, if anything comes open, where you guys need somebody to leave the wire, like I want to be that guy. And they came to me later on that night after the Blackwater thing happened, and they're like, well, okay, well, you got your wish. Like they need a radio operator for a forward air controller.
So what does that mean?
So that means I was with the forward air controller. He's a pilot, and every pilot has to do at least 2 years as a forward air controller, which means they're on the ground, boots on the ground, and they get trained on how to call in airstrikes from fixed wing helicopter. I mean.
L2,
Rotator,
L1s,
yeah, fast moving, all of them, yeah. They know how to communicate with. I mean, they know how to interact with all of them. So my job was to keep the communications up. So as soon as that happened, like that night we went on our first mission out into town. So we went out to town. It was completely dark. It was probably about 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night. And as soon as there was like a bridge that you'd have to pass to go into the city.
Of Fallujah.
Yes, the city of Fallujah. Yeah, 2004. And so we paused right there, and we started taking small arms fire and RPGs, and we lost a guy that night actually.
Miguel, what was that like to be shot at?
Well,
for the first time?
so
Yeah.
I mean, my adrenaline was pretty pumped the first time, and I remember, this is gonna sound kind of weird or like bullshit, but I remember, there was a bridge, like I said. So on the top of the bridge, it was railroad tracks. And I remember like low crawl. I didn't know that we'd lost a Marine at the time. I remember low crawling up the hill, like the basic training stuff. And I remember like thinking like this is it. Like this is the game. It's not practice. Like this is
reality.
Yeah, this is like what. And I was actually like excited. And then I got
adrenaline thing.
Yes, yeah. And then I got up on the bridge, and we already started digging. There was like a cement barrier, just like there is on bridges. Cement barrier, and then the bridge, the railroad tracks, and then barrier on the other side. So we started digging in right there, and that was the first time that we took I took small arms fire. So it was like, bullets. You can hear them like whizzing by you, and if they're close enough, you can hear them snap, which is something that did happen like a couple days later. So we dug in.
What was the snap?
When they get within a certain distance of your ear, I think it's like a small sonic boom or something like that. So it kind of sounds like a firecracker when they zip by.
Did you know their location?
So here's what happened. We didn't always know their location, but when we first got there, and we got on the radio I was the radio operator. The forward air controller got on the air. They had it was a Spectrum C-130 gunship, and they had like infrared vision, so they could see, or heat optics, so they could tell us. They told us right away, like, okay, there's 4 guys in this building right here. It looks like they have small arms, a weapons cache, and they're fighting age males because they could see like the heat would be different on the weapon than it would on the bodies, right? So they would say, okay, they're starting to engage with Marines. Do you want us to take them out? And then yes, we would, yeah. And then it was kind of like fireworks a little bit. Like you didn't really see where it came from. All you would see was the impact, and that was it. Like you just see boom, 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 and they would have also these things called guys that were squirters, guys that got away, that shot out of the building and went to another one, and then they would be able to tell us where that guy went. Like so that was the first night that I was outside at the gate in Fallujah.
This is for real.
This is for real, yeah. This is the real thing now, and I'm not doing.
This is not drill.
This is not drill. I'm not in Okinawa, just training, and not to downgrade any of that stuff because it was very helpful. I think I was a lance corporal at the time, so.
Was it a strange feeling like there really is someone out there that really wants to kill me?
It was a strange feeling, yes, but at the same time, I felt so much more confident in our ability to kill them before they killed us. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like they had way more reason to be scared than I did. Mm-hmm. I mean, but these surgeons in Fallujah were the type that were like, I'm ready to die today. Just,
mm-hmm.
I'm ready.
Heaven.
Yeah, I'm ready to die today, and like not to sound weird or anything, but I was very happy to be able to help
get them on their way.
Yes, yeah, and
they really believe this.
From what I understand, I mean, I didn't have any conversations with the guys, so I couldn't tell you like for certain, but
that's their
yeah.
Okay, their main point, you being there, they being there. What was their ISIS? Correct. It was ISIS? It
was ISIS before it was called ISIS, yeah.
Yeah. What was their main goal, Miguel?
Zarqawi was the leader of that. I don't remember. Al-Zarqawi, he was the main guy that we were after. Their main goal, as far as I understood and knew it, and this is all the motivation that it took for me to not have to feel funny. When I came back, people would ask me, like, political type questions or anything like that, or do you think we should be there? And, in my mind, it was, I don't think... It didn't take long for me to figure out a way, not to rationalize it, but because I would have done it either way, because I had to, but just to figure that these guys wanted to kill us just because we were American, and they would have done anything they could have to kill any one of my family, anybody that I knew that was over here in the States, just because they were Americans. I mean,
they already had 9/11.
Yeah, I mean, say no more. Like these guys were those type of guys that just hated us because of our beliefs, our freedom, and the privileges that we have as Americans. And and also we wanted, like, when it came down to it, like, we were fighting so that the Iraqi population could experience some of those freedoms as well.
Where were you when they actually had the blue voting finger? Were you in country at that time when they actually could vote?
Yes, I was there. That was my second deployment. I was there for the first vote. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big deal.
It was a big deal, yeah.
So could you? Okay, so that was that first night out on patrol.
Yeah.
Did you stay out there, come back in, back in and out, or what?
We stayed there for about 2 months out in. So what happened was that initial spot that we were there for about 5 days, and it was pretty intense. Like, we got.
How did you sleep and eat?
There wasn't a heck of a lot of sleep, but we did dig in, and we did have MREs. So, like, we just had to stay underneath the cement because there was a sniper that had us pinned down for, I would say, probably about 3.5 days out of those 5. So anytime, like, if we moved our head up or anything like that, we would start taking fire, and we had no clue where it was coming from. But they were close enough that you could hear them snap by your head.
Wow.
Yeah, and every once in a while the forward air controller would look at me and say, like, Menchaca, I need to have that radio higher, and I would just grab it, like, hold my breath and run it up this little hill, and then I would run back and slide in. And talking about the sleep thing, there was also one time when I was I was radio operating for the company. It was just me and the company commander that were up, right? And I had to stay with him to make sure that the radio was running. At some point, I started dozing off a little bit. This guy was a captain, and he hit me over the head with the radio, the handset. Hit me in the Kevlar with it and yelled at me and told me that he better not see me getting comfortable.
But you had to be exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
We were exhausted. It was very hot too at the time.
Yeah. When you say hot, what are we talking about? 110?
In April, I would say like maybe somewhere close to like 105. But then in the summer, it caught up. I mean, it got way up there.
Yeah. So I'm trying to visualize. You were actually in the city of
Right.
Fallujah,
Yeah.
hunkered down.
Yes, we were on the very outskirts, and then after that 7-day period, whatever it was, we pushed forward and got a foothold actually in the city. So as soon as we got there, every woman and children, everybody except for any fighting age male that wanted to stay and fight, left. So we got and this was the next morning right after we got into that. Yeah, it was like a trail of them, and they were all just leaving. So anybody left in that city was fighting age males, mostly. I mean, I don't remember anything other than that.
So they stayed for the fight.
The fighting age males.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, they stayed. But I was telling you one time that I read a book that was talking about General Mattis and how like there was all these. I mean, like a stadium full of innocent civilians from Fallujah, which is completely not true. Like there just wasn't. There was all fighting age male that were in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, and
How old would that be? How old would that be?
I would say anywhere from like. There might have been some that were under 18, but I would say in general like 20, maybe 16 to 20 at the very youngest, I suppose. Up to like 45, 50, maybe older.
That old?
Yeah.
And where were they getting all their ammunition? How were they being supplied?
That I don't know. I mean, that's way outside of my pay grade, and I couldn't. That's why I could make some assumptions or say things that I've heard, but I don't know for certain, so I won't say.
Were
anything.
they well supplied the whole time?
They were, yeah.
They were.
Oh yeah. I mean, almost any house that any of them were in, they had more weapons that was needed for that amount of people.
Wow.
Yeah.
So after that 5 days, did you move into the city then?
Yep. Then we were staying. So then we would stay in one of the houses that was empty, and we would, if we needed to push forward, then we would just move to another house that was.
What was the house like?
So it was kind of like, it reminded me of Mexico a little bit actually. It would be like they were all of brick and mortar, and they were. There wasn't a lot of running water or stuff like that. They all had nice. I mean, they all had blankets and some of there was couches in them and stuff like that.
Did they have TV sets?
Yeah, there was TVs in some of them. Yes, yeah, but there still wasn't like ours. And the televisions, like it wasn't something that we did or watched. I don't think it was available. I don't know what they watched or what anything like that, but we didn't.
So you just hold up and you kept inching forward. So you took this one house and then just kept.
Yeah.
How did that work to try to take the city?
So we were just inching forward because these guys were kind of backing up a little bit, and there was at one point even that we had a cat vehicle, which is like a heavily armored Humvee with the speaker on it, and we went and they kept playing this message that said to come out and fight because we were pretty restricted at that time from moving any more forward because of for political reasons. Like they just weren't sure or not if that was something that they wanted us to do, was sweep through the whole city, right? So we would play this message to these guys at night to come out and fight, and then we would play American music. And it was like, I mean, hard rock, rap. And then they'd stop it and
the Beatles.
They'd play the message again. And these guys didn't come out anymore. So how that 2-month period ended when I was in the city.
You stayed in the city for 2 months.
Right. I did go back to base like once or twice, maybe not. According to my corporal, I was going back all the time. But I did go back a couple times to the base. There was Forward Observation Base, and I would go back, and I think he only went back once, right? As it should be. You know, they let the junior person, whoever that is, they always let you eat first. Like whatever opportunities that are presented that is like a privilege, you always get first dibs. And that's not like housing and stuff like that, of course, but that is like if you're going to eat. If somebody needs to go back to take a shower and get stuff for somebody, if it's, you know, then they let the junior Marine go.
Okay, speaking of that, how did you eat? How did you sleep? How did you stay clean in those 2 months?
Okay, so I didn't stay very clean. I did come back and was able to take a shower and got things like cigarettes and like some regular type of food, that whatever I could bring back to the other guys, you know. So that's one of the things that is first and foremost. And I had to go back and get a haircut too. While I was back during that period, I had to get a haircut. And here's a funny story about that. So I'm sitting there getting a haircut, right? And then this sergeant comes up to me, the same guy that I told that I wanted to leave the gate if there's opportunity presented itself. And while I'm getting a haircut, he got the clippers out of the guy's hand and goes zzz, like right in my head. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, that's not what I said, of course. But they had to shave my head for right. So I'm thinking all of it had to go. He did it like right in the middle. And I'm thinking to myself, and I told him something like, you know, if I get killed out there now, I'm going to be in my casket with a shaved bald head because of you. And I'm not going to be able to be in there with the haircut that I normally have, which is very similar to this one that I still wear.
That's funny word about that one.
I remember a conversation of the second time I went, before we went house to house in this other area. I was in the bathroom showering, and there were these guys that were in a different company, and they all had like these mustaches, and they were having a conversation like, well, are you going to leave your mustache? And the guy's like, well, probably not. I don't really want to get, like, if there's some chance that I'd have an open casket, I don't want to be there with a mustache on.
Who would think of it? Oh boy.
Well,
but then were you guys fed enough?
Sure, yeah, we had MREs, and there was guys that would come out to us and drop off supplies.
Was it dangerous coming back and forth?
It actually was pretty dangerous at the time.
I would think.
Yeah.
You're talking. And
not only that, like, I don't, like, my thoughts on it was I didn't want something to happen in doing something like that. You know what
Do you want the challenge of the fight?
Yes, absolutely, for sure. Yeah.
And that's what you trained for.
Right, yeah. And not only that, like, I mean, everybody wants the challenge of the fight, and everybody above you, like, that's what they want. They don't, you know what I'm saying? And I couldn't really tell you exactly why that would, I mean, other than, of course, that's what you joined for. Like, that's right. Why you put on the uniform, and these guys were bad guys. They did not need to be.
If you were to be victorious over Fallujah, and I'll let you explain that, then there's another battle somewhere else to go to.
So we did exactly what we were expected and told to do at Fallujah, as far as what came down from, the direction of the politician or government, I would say. Mm-hmm. So we went in, but we were not the group that swept all the way through the city. So we got another group of Marines, another company replaced all of us when our like 8 months was over, or whatever it was. It was about 8 months, and then we went back to Camp Pendleton. Okay, then those guys swept through the city. 6 months later, like, it's just the way the rotation worked. 6 months after we got back for the first time, we had to go back the second time. Or it was my second time. It wasn't everybody's second time. It was some guys' third, some guys' first.
And you knew you were going to go back.
Yeah, we already knew.
Uh-huh.
We didn't know it was going to be that fast. Mm-hmm. So the whole 6 months that we were back, we were doing like training, required training to be a deployable unit, and so we weren't home a heck of a lot. During that time, my oldest daughter was born. Actually, she was born like about 2 weeks after I got home.
Wow.
Yeah, she was.
Wow. You didn't get to see much of her.
I didn't, but it was still.
It was
still nice being there with her when she was born, and
your family was at Camp Pendleton.
Yeah.
On base.
Right. Yeah. And she's 19 years old now. She's a great kid.
Yeah. Say the name. Say her name.
Oh, her name's Samantha Menchaca, and then she has a younger sister who's 18 months apart, who was born like 2 weeks after I got back the second time. And her name is Kirsten Menchaca, and she just graduated high school right here in College Place area.
Can you believe it?
She asked me the same thing that night.
Yeah.
And she's going to school for early childhood development in
Right.
Eastern Oregon University.
Fantastic.
Yeah, she's
where's she going?
Eastern Oregon University.
Fantastic.
Yeah, she starts in the fall. They're
that's fantastic.
great kids. Yeah, they're
Great job, Miguel.
they are. And you know, I had a lot. So the second time that I got back, the older one, she was already like about 18 months. No, she would have been. Yeah, she would have been right around 18 months.
See, this is a huge sacrifice.
It was, but at the same time, it was like it was really good motivation at the same time as well. It didn't ever feel like it was anything. You know, I was still very happy. I was still very glad to be doing what I was doing, even though I couldn't be there with them. But
By the
you know,
way,
when I got
speaking
home, the second time, the one that was 18 months, I remember she was in the stroller when I saw her, and she was about maybe 15, 20 yards, and I just kept walking towards her, and then her mom snapped her out of the little stroller that she was in, and that was the first time I saw her walk.
Wow.
And she like ran over to me and gave me a kiss on the lips, and there was all these people I didn't even know them. They were just snapping pictures away. Yeah, it was really cool.
Great.
Yeah, it was
great.
probably one of the best, most memorable moments of my life. You know? And there was a lot of good ones while I was in the Marine Corps. There were some not so good ones also.
Yeah, that's part of life.
Yeah, and so the second time that we went over there, we did something similar to what the Marines that replaced us did in Fallujah. There was a small area on the Iraq-Syrian border. It was Operation Steel Curtain, and we swept through several cities.
And why would you
go house to
doing
house,
that?
just to wipe out as many. Just do our best to make sure that no insurgents were in the country. You know, so we went house to house.
House to house.
House to house, yeah.
What
So it would be
does
like
that mean, Miguel?
it's kind of like if you pheasant hunt and there's like a group of guys that sweep through a field, and then there's two guys at the end, like they call them stoppers, to make sure that any pheasants, and there's dogs of course, any pheasants that are in the field are going to come up at some point. So you're sweeping through a city, and as wide as the city is, there's Marines, platoons, or squads that are going from every house to
every house.
Every house, literally, there was a 4-man team that went in every house. They would throw a grenade in the window. There was a point man. The second guy, there was a guy, and they would go in the same order every house, and then they would have to spray paint every entrance to the house after it was cleared to make sure that they could go to the next one.
Were most of the houses empty?
Most of them were, yeah. But there was some. So when we finally pushed those guys all the way to the back part of the last little city, was when there was that's when we encountered a lot of more small arms fire than we did any other time on that deployment. Fallujah was. I mean, the whole time I was in Fallujah, so it wasn't just that 2 months that I was in small arms fire combat situations. The whole time I was there was anytime we got called out for the forward air controller was that type of situation. So even though we got pulled back and didn't sweep through the city, we were still have to go. I was still in a lot of combat situations, and I actually was blessed and honored enough to get a Valor Medal for my actions in Fallujah.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Sure.
Share that story.
Yeah, well, it's just something. It's an award, and what it is it was a Navy Marine Corps Achievement Medal with a combat distinguishing device, which is a little V that stands for Valor, and you get to put it on your ribbon and the medal itself. If that award is also a Valor Medal, which means that your life was on the line, or you helped save lives for the same actions that the award was given.
That's huge.
It's a pretty big deal. I mean, they don't hand them out, but I'm telling you, like, it just felt like I felt like I was just doing my job, and you know, and in some degree I was, but at the same time it was in pretty extreme conditions. And
when did they actually give you the medal?
so I got that medal about 2 months after we returned from deployment.
Did you know you were going to get it?
I did,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I knew that they'd written it up, and I knew that they put in for it, and I kind of the way that they were talking to me about it, like I just had a good feeling that it was, I mean, they were pretty sure it was going to go through. And I actually got that medal the same day that I got promoted.
Wow.
So they have everybody out in front, and then they call you out in front and read the award. And I mean, I don't know it verbatim, but it said something like, you know, while attached to Company F, 2nd Battalion, 1st Marine, Lance Corporal Menchaca, diligently and bravely managed 3 radios for the radio operator controller. He was frequently and constantly engaged in small arms fire with the enemy while serving his duty, and in a diligent and proper manner. He was essential in calling in 81 airstrikes.
81 airstrikes.
81 airstrikes that destroyed numerous enemy personnel, positions, and weapons caches. And then what I really like about those awards is that the way they read them and present them. It's the first sergeant reading them, and then it says something like, you know, Lance Corporal Menchaca's bravery and duty to country were keeping with the high standards set.
Traditions.
The traditions set, high standards set by the United States Marine Corps. Given this day.
And who was there, and where was it presented?
That was in Camp Pendleton, California, and my parents were there actually.
They were there.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow, Miguel.
It was something really cool.
I hope you have videos or pictures of that.
There's pictures, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Boy, that's. And may I ask, where do you have that encased?
I just have it. It's in it's at my parents' house for sure.
That should be in a shadow box.
Yeah.
Or something.
Well, I do. So anytime, I do have a shadow box of all my, like my ribbons and my shooting medals, with some sergeant chevrons. And when I got promoted to sergeant, my dad was actually. So it was the commanding officer on one side, and then my dad on the other side switched out the chevrons. Yeah.
Wow. Very, 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 very. Very, very special.
Yeah.
81 airstrikes. That's huge.
Yeah, there was.
That saved a lot of lives.
I sure hope so. I'm
who
just
would-
glad to have been a part of it.
Yeah, boy, that's remarkable. Did you feel like you were the man at the right place at the right time to get the job done? This was your purpose.
Well, I wasn't always 100% confident in my ability, but somehow, like, I just did what I was supposed to do, and I was able to repair or get communications back up when it went down, or I was able to, like I said in that one story, get the radio higher, and like I just I got to give all the credit to the leadership, because it was one of those things where, like, I wasn't real confident in my abilities at first, but they were, and you know, I think there were certain traits. One of the commanding officers that we lost the second time. He was the second deployment. He was the only Marine from our company that we lost. But he would. I talked to his wife at some point. And
do you mind sharing his name?
Yeah, his name is Major Ray Mendoza. Yeah, he was a.
You spoke of him a lot.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he looked out for me in ways that I couldn't even explain, and he also was just very motivational. Just kind of like he was like a super guy. I mean, he was a heavyweight wrestler at Ohio State.
Well, he had a lot of confidence in you, Miguel.
He did, for some reason, and at first I really didn't. I don't know that I would have agreed with him if he had told me everything, but
he saw it.
He not only saw it, like, he spoke to me and acted towards me as if it already was. And then it became, and then it was. It's like, yeah, and
that's leadership.
That's like that is perfected leadership.
You did, and need I say, communications is the key. I mean, to any war.
The actual communications itself.
Communications is the key.
Yeah, I would say communications, not just in the radio sense, but more importantly in the communications between the Marines themselves, between your leadership and the lower Marines.
Yeah. Oh, did that all happen on the second tour then?
When he died,
Uh-huh.
yeah, he died on the second tour, and I can share the story real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So we pushed, like I said, all those insurgents into the very back of this one little area of Fallujah, and so we were going into 2 columns into the city. It was dark in the morning. We didn't have very much sleep the night before because
Was it quiet?
It was real quiet.
No.
Yeah, and it was all sand except for like this little city that they were all in. So we were going into the city, 2 columns, and I was standing right next to him, and there's probably about maybe 10 feet between each Marine and the column. So he's right here, I'm right here. About 5 minutes after we left where we were sleeping going into the city, they called me on the radio and asked for our grid, right?
I'm sorry, ask for what?
For our grid, our location.
Uh-huh.
And I told them, be advised, we just stepped off 5 minutes ago. I'm thinking in my mind, like, why are they calling? Like, obviously we just left. Why would they be asking where we're at? So he had a radio also, and his radio was set up to talk to the platoon commanders, the lieutenants, and the radio that I had was from battalion, so that whenever they called, if it was something that I could take care of myself or something that I knew the answer to, I would just tell them, instead of having to take him away from what he was doing with the platoons. But there was times where they would call and say, we need to. He was called outside Warhammer 6. They would say, like, we need to talk to Warhammer 6 Actual, who was him, who was Ray Mendoza, Major Ray Mendoza. So we're walking into the city. They called for the grid, our location. I told them we just stepped off. About 2 minutes later, they called again and asked for it. So I'm thinking in my mind, like, they must, whoever is in the command post, as the officer, whoever the officer in the command post is, he must just need to have or want to have a grid that he can put in the logbook for whatever reason. I'm sure he had several of them. So I didn't have a GPS on me, but there was a lieutenant that was about 20 yards in the column who did, right? His name was Lieutenant Williams. So I ran back to him. I borrowed his GPS and I called in. I think I called in a 10-digit grid if he had a GPS. I don't really remember if it was 8 or 10. And as I'm like jogging my way back up to the major, he stepped on a mine, and I
saw this, Miguel?
Well, it was dark, but I just saw the explosion and where it was, and I was pretty sure instantly that it was him because where it happened, and he wasn't like yelling for me for the radio or anything. So I just like I thought that it might have been IEDs that were tied together, so I was kind of bracing myself for one that might go off next to me, but it didn't. So I took a knee and I called in immediately. I heard like screaming and stuff like that, or like kind of not screaming, but kind of just like. How would I say?
Like someone in pain?
No, just voices of other Marines, because he died instantly. There was a Marine that did get hit with some shrapnel that was close to him. Yeah, probably like the next guy that would have been and he probably was maybe a little bit more than 10 feet if he only took shrapnel. But I mean, not only took shrapnel, but if he took shrapnel and didn't get, his injuries weren't any more severe than that. Because I took a knee and I called it in instantly. I said, be advised, we just got hit with an IED, stand by for the casualty report. And then somebody shined a flashlight on him, and I saw him. But it was one of those things, like it took me some time to kind of like work this out, and it's taken like going to PTSD treatment and things like this, but at some point, like I realized that if somebody would have came up to him, even God himself, and said, one guy is going to die from your company, who would you want it to be? That he very quickly would have said me, of course, and the first thing I thought about was like his wife and kids, right? And it was real, like I was kind of shook up. I was really, really scared.
Were you just shocked?
I was terrified. you know, I was really scared.
Sure.
And I was really scared over there sometimes.
Sure.
You know, it was funny
Of
that they would
course.
give somebody a Valor Medal who was just scared.
What's that again?
It's funny that they would give out a Valor Medal to somebody who was scared.
Oh,
But I think most guys,
My
I
gosh,
think it's
you
weird
can't-
if you're not scared. But, you know.
Yes.
But I didn't freeze something.
They're lying if they're not scared.
Right. So I was on the knee. I'm pretty shook up. And then the XO, who is like his right-hand man, comes up to me. And he is all business. Like he gets on the radio right away, and he's like, you know, this was like one of his best friends. You know, he gets on the radio, calls it, and he's like, not nonchalant, I would say, but he's just like, you know, business. And he says, you know, Warhammer 6 is KIA. I have the ball now. We're pushing forward through the city, and then that helped me get my bearings under me. You know, so I stood up, and we started, you know, going and doing our thing, and we went into that city, and we killed a lot of insurgents that day also.
Did you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Miguel, do you just you shut it down, you just keep moving forward? Is that what you do?
Well, that's what he did a real good job of. It was harder for me, I think, because, I mean, well, the officers are trained really well, and I'm not saying that the enlisted aren't, but he definitely had a different...
Cool under fire.
Right, yeah. But once he did, like, I feel like it was easy to emulate him. Not easy to emulate him.
Did he give you strength?
It gave me enough strength to get to do what I needed to do. Right.
Right. Hard question, but did they immediately evacuate? How did they evacuate him? How did that happen?
So from what I understand, or how I'm pretty sure it went down was, I think they covered him with a poncho right then, and then there must have been I think a couple guys from headquarters platoon had to pick up the remains, and yeah.
Well, that's and so you're moving on.
Yes.
Going with your mission.
Right. Yeah.
But I know, Miguel, that totally never leaves you, though.
No, I mean,
of course
I think about it every day. You know.
Every day.
Yeah, I would say every day.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there is that'd be hard it'd be hard for that or the thoughts of that not being in my mind.
Yeah. How well did you know Major Mendoza?
So he was the
captain at the time.
He was the commanding officer that I reported into when I first got there. But he was the captain at the time. He was the one that told me, you know, we're going to Iraq. You know, and I told him, well, this is what I signed up for. I didn't know it at that time, but his wife told me later that the day after soon thereafter from the reporting, that he had told her that he saw something special in me that I didn't see, and I hadn't met him that long at that point. But he was my commanding officer for the first tour. I was attached to other units, and then I became a company radio operator. I switched positions with this guy who was a company radio operator, and I was Fort Air Control radio operator. We switched positions, and I was privileged enough to be the radio operator for a man named Major Mendoza. Yeah. And Major Mendoza, he lost his life
doing what he wanted, trained to do.
Yeah, he was actually one of, I think, maybe 5 or 10 people that lost their life while doing work for the CIA and in the military at the same time.
My goodness.
And that was in 2007.
Did you tell me one time that he had a premonition?
Who's that?
Major Mendoza.
Well, I wouldn't say it was a premonition, but like you can tell from the photos that were taken before that he did not look. He looked like he knew what was going to happen. I mean, but I don't know that he ever expressed anything like that to anybody.
Sure. But aren't you so grateful to his wife to share that with you? His confidence. Compliment.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes I wonder if it's not one of those things that, like, so if any Marine dies, so there was a gunnery sergeant that was in like the platoon command or the platoon sergeant for the communication guys before I went and started getting sent with all these line companies, and he was telling us something one day like you know, he was getting all up in our business and yelling at us because somebody had screwed up or done something really stupid, you know. And he was telling us, like, he was pissed off, and I'd never seen him like a butt chewing like this in the fleet. But he said something like this, like, don't you worry, like, if any of you ever die, like, don't you worry, I'm gonna tell your parents that you were the best thing since sliced bread. And I, like, thinking back, I don't think that she would lie, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know that it wasn't one of those type of things either. But that she was but they were those people that they did it the opposite way, because she knew how good he was, you know, and everybody did. She didn't have to. Nobody had to tell her anything like that, and it wouldn't have been true. I mean, it would have been, because it was so much the truth that it would have been obvious. That's the type of guy that he was, you know.
Miguel, would there be anybody else that could share this story like you're sharing it today?
Well, not from my
perspective. If his wife were to
perspective.
watch this, would there be anybody else that could share like you have?
I think everybody that encountered this man would have a similar experience, but from a different perspective. I was just, it used to bug me that I wasn't the one that died instead of it, which is weird, you know.
That's a guilt thing.
It was guilt, and I didn't really know like how to handle it and stuff. You know, I wasn't making the best of choices afterwards, but then it became, then at some point, and this was not too very long ago, that it got to the point where I felt honored that I was there when it happened. So not everybody has that story that they were there when it happened, or that they just didn't happen to not be there when they were supposed to. But everybody that encountered this man, and the other company officer, Major Zembiak, that ended up losing his life also.
He did?
Major Zembiak did as well.
Did?
Yeah.
How
But I wasn't there. It was after I had just separated from the Marine Corps, and I got a phone call from a guy saying, well, like, maybe you should sit down, like Major Zembiak lost his life, and their leaderships can't be compared, right? Because they're both top notch, and I wouldn't say in different ways, just different styles. They were different people, of course, but the utmost respect for both of them from anybody that ever served under them and anybody that they ever served for. I guarantee you, when I had the privilege of meeting General Mattis and told him who I served with, he knew instantly. You know, he's just that. He's something much above.
He was a star.
I mean, Major General Mattis himself is who I'm referring to. You know, he's
right. Exactly.
Somebody told me one time that he's the. I probably shouldn't say it because he might watch at some point, and I don't want him to feel.
This is on the record.
Well, so I won't say it, but it's a good thing, a very, very good thing.
Go ahead.
You want me to say it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Well,
go
somebody
ahead.
told me one time, and this Marine's a little bit younger than me, that General Mattis is the chesty puller of our generation. Do you know?
Don't you believe that?
Well, I believe it, but I don't know that he would want me to say that.
Oh, he's probably heard it before. He's probably heard that.
I hope so.
I have
I
a
don't-
feeling. He's got a reputation, good reputation for that. By the way, just going backward for a few minutes, you're trained to kill. I guess that's the best way to put it. But do they ever prepare you for what could happen, like with Major Mendoza? Do they train you emotionally to handle that?
I don't know that there's any course or any way that there could be any preparation for things like that. I think they rely most, as they should, heavily enough on the leadership that when something like that happens, that the proper training has been conducted for Marines to carry out their business in the manner that they're supposed to accomplish the mission. So, having said that,
you still have the human emotion.
it's still there. It's still there, you know. And
This is the band of brothers.
some guys deal with it really, really well, and some guys don't deal with it as well. And I just, you know, I think there's predetermined things in your genes or in your makeup that would decide like what that is. But I also think that a lot of that, there's decisions that you can make also that can have an effect on that as well, you know. And I didn't always make the best ones, you know. But at the same time, you know, I think that there's some degree of PTSD that will exist in anybody under certain circumstances.
Absolutely,
Right.
no question. Just on a side note, we interviewed a Korean War veteran, and he said, "You never get over war," and I really believe that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't say enough about the Marines and the soldiers that went before. I mean, all of them, corpsmen, airmen, the guys that fought in World War II, especially for me, the Marines, just because of the title and the things that they added to it that were already at such a high standard. I mean, they really set the bar high, and it's not that I would want to compare wars or anything, but there was times that I would be there in Iraq and think that like those guys must have had it so much worse. Like I think of Okinawa, Iwo Jima, you know, things like this. Guadalcanal, frozen shores. I mean, the list goes on and on and on for Marines and for soldiers as well. But it's hard not to think about those things and then think about how bad that you have it, even though everybody's different and every war is different. So that's the thing that also like that I have to remember is that you know urban warfare was not really a huge thing in Vietnam and some of the other wars, but we did do that. So and I'm not saying those things that I would want any recognition in any way, shape, or form comparative to what those men and women deserve. But I'll say this: it was different.
It was urban warfare.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I keep thinking door-to-door combat. It's just frightening.
Sure.
But
I mean, it's all frightening, right?
Yeah, you're right. It's all frightening. So on that second tour, you mentioned over on the Syrian border. Is that where you completed that mission before you came home?
The second one, that was the second deployment. That was the one that we lost Major Mendoza. Yeah.
And that one.
Yeah.
And
we did complete it. Yeah.
And how long after that did you come home?
Almost immediately.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, from the you mean come home to Camp Pendleton or to separate from the Marine Corps?
No, just coming back to Camp Pendleton.
Yeah. So we swept through those cities, and then we did like one more small mission, and then that one was a float, or we went on a ship. So then we just got back on the ship. We got back on the ship and returned home, except for Major Mendoza.
So could you describe when you arrived? Back at Camp Pendleton, was that pretty much toward the end of your?
That was I had about a year left in my enlistment.
And you stayed at Camp Pendleton? Yeah,
so I had to actually extend my enlisted contract to go on the second deployment, which I was happy to do.
I see.
Yeah.
What was it like when you landed at Camp Pendleton? Actually at Camp Pendleton?
Yeah.
What was it, like a C-130 or?
No, it was a
141?
AAV, which is a vehicle that can go on land and water.
Oh.
So they just get close enough to the shore, and then you.
You came on shore at Camp Pendleton.
Yep. The second time, the first time we flew in.
Yeah.
So
What was? Could you describe that specific day when you actually touched the beaches of
Camp
United
Pendleton.
States?
Well, it was.
California.
Yeah, it was something like.
Was it surreal?
No, I just was super thankful that I was able to return unharmed. I mean, with my life, and of course, I felt bad about the guys that we lost, and there was other ones at other companies, but.
Was your family right there?
No, not the second. That was
Uh-huh.
just the woman that I was married to at the time, and my oldest Samantha.
Was she right there to meet you?
When we got on shore, we had to take like a small bus ride from there to the actual command post, and then she was right there.
Right there. By the way, when you were over there, what kind of communication did you have with home?
So we had the ability to go to this like a phone center, and we also had a sat phone that we would be able to use every once in a while.
Fairly often?
Well, it was a lot of guys, so we would rotate it through, but I had just a little bit more privileges since I was the radio operator.
Right.
But even still, like, they were like, the gunnery sergeant just made me hand it on over to him.
Were there letters? Lots of letters?
There was
Some
letters, yeah, lots of letters,
Lots of letters,
yeah.
uh-huh.
Yeah, and they were able to send packages sometimes, like priorities, right, or cigarettes and chew.
Because you know, at the same time, you've got a family back home.
Right.
You know, you've got a new family
Sure.
back home. And that's got to be on your mind. You've got to stay alive for your family.
Well, it was, I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's, I mean, that's still something that's in my mind, you know, when it comes to my decisions and things like this. Like, I want to be able to do the right thing so that I'm still able to enjoy my family's company and stuff. Yeah.
Many years ahead to do that.
I sure hope so.
Yes, you do.
It's probably like my favorite thing to do. Is,
Yeah, that's fantastic.
I mean, they're older now, so it's got its advantage, perks, and you know, its pros and cons.
No, Miguel, they can think for themselves now.
That was not a good thing for me. Okay.
No, you don't need to comment. But anyway.
That wasn't always. That didn't always work out in my favor. That freedom.
Okay. So I had 1 year to go living on Camp Pendleton.
Yeah.
And then you were discharged, and then I'm gonna let you talk. Then you came back to Oregon after that.
I came back to Oregon, yeah, but I didn't come back to the area here. I moved to Portland, excuse me, Portland, Oregon, and the kids were here, but I would see them like, I get like 10 days a month with them, and then I bring them back, and then so when I was going through school for air traffic control and aircraft dispatch, and I had my FAA flight dispatch license, which never goes away. That's not what I'm doing right now for work, but I still have those.
What did you want to do with that?
I wanted to be an aircraft controller, but I didn't know at the time that it was similar to the military, that they kind of put you anywhere at first. But I did get the degree, and I mean, it was nothing. Those college credits still went towards my bachelor's in business management.
Good.
With emphasis in leadership. But so, yeah, and then at some point after I got done with school, which wasn't an incredibly long time, I was only over in the area for like 2 years, and then I came back to the area where my kids live. And then it was 1 week with me, 1 week with their mom. So I was a single dad for a lot of the time that they grew up. I mean, I was a single dad, but not totally. I mean, there would be, you know, that week off was, yeah, it was.
Right. So now here we are today.
Right.
And what are your plans? What do you think your plans are going forward?
So I put in an application for law school at Gonzaga right now. There's some other, a lot more opportunities, you know, but right now I'm just working on staying who I am and bettering myself in a lot of different ways. I'm studying for the bar exam, and it is a tricky test. Like, it is, yeah.
It's a hard one.
And I always felt like I tested pretty well. Like once I like, but it is tricky. I think if I do well on the LSAT, I can. Did I say the bar exam?
You did
I meant to say the LSAT. Yeah. I think if I can do well enough on it, I'll get picked up. It might not be Gonzaga, I'm not sure, but somewhere I'll get accepted somewhere.
Oh, I'm curious why you're choosing law.
Just because, you know, I've bumped elbows with a lot of people that were in like a lot of situations that wasn't completely their fault, and I felt like some of them were paying big prices, and I just felt like there wasn't always somebody to advocate for me in the way that I would have liked to be represented in some of my experiences. And
are you speaking specifically helping veterans?
Maybe, but just anybody in general. I would really like, you know, not just veterans, but I really want to. I was a personal trainer for many years, also, and I also just put in an application for a personal training position here in Walla that hasn't been filled yet. I talked to the manager, and I think I'm going to be interviewing this week. And I've had 2 jobs that were for several years, both of them as a personal trainer. So yeah.
Well, you have a lot of gifts, Miguel. There's different opportunities
Well, thank you. I
Because you have a
appreciate
lot of
that.
gifts and you're very intelligent,
Well, thanks.
for sure. So, by the way, have you stayed in touch since your years with buddies? in the
Sure.
Marine Corps? I
Yeah.
mean,
Actually,
some of them.
yeah. Well, there's some that I've seen, some that I just talked to on the phone, but yeah, I do stay in
'Cause
contact
it
with.
is the Band of Brothers.
It is, yeah. And there
It's-
was also, like in Okinawa, when I was in Okinawa station there was a sergeant that kind of, well, he came up to us one time, and I hadn't been there for more than 3 months, maybe like 2, and he said something like, I need a new workout buddy. Like my gym partner left, so like which one of you guys wants to work out with me? And nobody really. And I was pretty frail at the time. I'm not saying I'm like a big guy now or by any means, but he and I was like, well, I kind of want to go to the gym, so I started going to the gym with him at lunch, and he did not treat me any. It was no favoritism or anything like that, but I did get to hang out. I did get to be with him a little bit extra.
Right.
And I got, it was just like a good mentor.
Mhm.
Sometimes you need people like that that are willing to put
Invest in you.
willing to invest their time in not just your well-being, but in your character and who you are, and the person and the Marine that,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
And he was exactly that. He was great. I just talked to him the other day.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, I think you've answered it in one way, but your service and experiences, how would you say they've affected your life?
So it was probably the smartest thing that I ever did was join the Marine Corps, and it's been nothing but, well, it's been, for the most part, nothing but good experiences from the service that I did, and I'm just super just honored that I got the chance to be in the military, and I'm so blessed that things went well enough that I was able to get an honorable discharge as an E5 and be able to be around, and not just be around, but be able to be spoken to and be taught and be led by such great men. I wasn't in any female men and female units, so I would, so it was just the men that were actually overseeing me. As far as I know, up the chain of command, I don't think there was, but I could be wrong. I mean.
So, if a younger man, just maybe out of high school or didn't know what to do with his life,
Mm-hmm.
what would you tell him?
If they were going the Marine route, I would actually probably want to talk to the parents more, because I always felt like my folks had a tougher job than whatever I was doing, because I wasn't incredibly worried when there was things going on or things that but I knew that I thought this has got to be way tougher for them. They're over there watching on the news and things like this, and I don't know what they're thinking or what they're feeling.
Absolutely. I mean, you went to war. You went to war twice, and your parents. And we don't acknowledge the families enough, because they sacrifice so much.
They do. And
Yes, they do.
and it's also not just like the parents, but everybody in the family.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
It's a huge sacrifice.
my sister and brother-in-law, my sisters and my brother-in-law have had to come alongside me in some pretty major ways at certain times to help me out.
Mm-hmm, you bet. Oh yeah, you bet. But so, Miguel, this is an excellent interview. Is there anything I missed or that you would like to add?
We didn't talk about Taylor Swift.
Exactly.
We didn't talk about Taylor Swift. I'm just joking. No.
She's taken for now. Don't worry, she'll be available again.
There's certain things I just want to say, I'm just so thankful for my parents and the way they brought me up from when I was a little kid. I have nothing but good memories of being with my mom before I started school, and I think and I know that even in those years, that they all had something to do with my decision to join and who I am today. I remember watching a lot of Rocky IV movie and the over the top movie. They're both Sylvester Stallone, and he's he's my dude. he's one of the guys that when I was a little kid I always looked up to him, for some reason. And I understand. I mean, the storylines are they're about overcoming odds and challenging adversity and stuff like that. And I always appreciated that even when I was a little small kid, I think it's something that's ingrained in young men, and not just young men, women as well. There's obstacles that are set up for us throughout our lives, no matter what profession or what avenue you decide to take, or whether you're man, woman, old. There's always something that you can be done to better yourself, or a goal that can be reached, and whether you're gonna stand up, or whether you're gonna kind of back down, or do what you can to accomplish that. And it's not to say that I haven't fallen and failed several times, but there is still things that I want to do, and things that, and as I find that when I have that's when I'm doing the best.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, Major Mendoza would be so very, very proud of you, and your parents are. And Miguel,
Yeah.
I'm very grateful to be your friend.
Thank you so much.
I'm just so proud and privileged.
Yeah.
I call you my brave heart.
Well,
I
thanks.
love my brave hearts. So we're just so honored to be able to do the Veterans History Project,
Thanks.
so that you can share your story.
Sure.
It's really important for everybody has a story, but it's important for for Americans to understand the sacrifices and what you patriots signed up to do.
Right.
That's
Thanks.
so huge. I really can't say it strongly enough. But thank you for being here today.
Thanks.
Really.
Yeah. No. Also, of course, I want to thank God, Jesus
Amen.
Christ.
Amen.
For
Amen.
everything that I have, everything that I've been given, and this beautiful life that I get to live and be a part of other people's too. It's
Amen.
yeah.
And I said, just to wind this up, he's got some great plans for you. He who began the work in you
We're
is
faithful.
completed.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Miguel.
Of course. Yeah. I'm glad.